What if the pain you feel could paint a masterpiece? Could your darkest moments be the spark of something beautiful? Edvard Munch turned his deepest pain into timeless art. Edvard Munch was born on December 12, 1863, in a small village called Adelsbruck in Norway, into a family that carried both love and tragedy in equal measure. His father, Christian Munch, was a doctor in the military, strict, deeply religious, and often consumed by melancholy. His mother, Laura, was gentle and artistic, bringing warmth and creativity into the home. But the Munch family lived under the shadow of sickness from the very beginning. When Edvard was only 5 years old, his mother fell ill with tuberculosis, an illness that was feared across Europe. He watched her grow weaker every passing week, her cough echoing in the cold rooms of their home. Despite her failing health, she tried to keep a smile for her children, drawing little pictures for them and telling stories. But the disease was merciless. Edvard lost his mother when he was still very young, an early wound that shaped the rest of his life. After Laura's death, the family moved to Oslo, hoping for a new beginning, but sorrow followed them. Edvard's older sister, Sophie, soon fell ill with the same disease. Edvard was deeply close to her. She encouraged him to draw and often brought him pencils and paper. Watching her fade away was unbearable for him. When she died at the age of 15, a second scar was carved into his childhood. These repeated confrontations with death planted in him the intense, emotional world that would later define his art. The Munch children grew up in poverty. Their father, overwhelmed by grief and consumed by religious anxiety, often warned them that sin and sorrow follow all who stray. He believed suffering was a divine punishment. This environment created in Edvard a deep sense of insecurity and fear. The house was cold, quite literally. The harsh Norwegian winters made their small home feel like a frozen box, and emotional warmth was rarely found. Edvard himself was often sick. He suffered from chronic respiratory problems and missed many days of school. While bedridden, he spent hours drawing. Art became the only place where he felt safe, where he could express what he could not say aloud. His notebooks soon filled with dark sketches of people, shadows, and moments he remembered from home. Even as a child, his drawings carried a strange maturity, a reflection of the world he lived in. Despite the sadness, there were moments of light. His Aunt Karen, who took care of the children after their mother died, encouraged him to keep drawing and believed strongly in his talent. She became the emotional anchor he desperately needed. All these early experiences, death, illness, fear, isolation, and the fragile moments of comfort, shaped the emotional foundation of Edvard Munch. His childhood was not simply a period of growing up. It was the beginning of a lifelong struggle with the shadows that eventually brought to life some of the most powerful artworks in the world. As Edvard Munch entered his teenage years, the emotional storms of his childhood had already shaped him into a fragile, yet intensely sensitive young man. He was thin, pale, and often ill, but inside him burned a deep and restless creative force. School never captured his interest. He preferred to spend time sketching people, shadows, and scenes that expressed his inner turmoil. His teachers disapproved, calling his drawings disturbing, but for Edvard, they were the only way to make sense of life. At the age of 17, Munch made a decision that would define his future. He enrolled in the Royal School of Art and Design in Oslo. This was a turning point. For the first time, he found himself in a world where emotions were not something to suppress, but something to paint. His early works already carried the intensity and rawness that would become his signature style. He was influenced by naturalism at first, but soon began experimenting with bolder colors, exaggerated forms, and symbolic imagery. It was during this period that he met Christian Krogh, a well-known Norwegian painter who immediately recognized Munch's unusual talent. Krogh pushed him to embrace the emotional power of his art instead of hiding it. "Paint what you feel," he told him, "not what you see." Those words stayed with Munch forever. Despite this support, Munch's personal life remained difficult. His father, strict and conservative, believed art was a sinful distraction. Their arguments were constant. Christian Munch wanted his son to become an engineer or architect, something respectable. Edvard, however, was determined to follow the only path that gave him meaning. The tension in their relationship grew heavier, and the young artist spent more and more time outside the home, wandering the streets of Oslo, sketching the lonely, the poor, the forgotten. In his early 20s, Munch experienced his first intense love affair with a woman known only as Miss Heiberg. The relationship was passionate but unstable, filled with jealousy and emotional conflict. It was the first of many turbulent romances that ultimately deepened his sense of insecurity and longing. These early experiences would later surface in his famous works, especially in paintings about love, fear, and loss. By the time Munch reached his 23rd year, his style had begun to evolve rapidly. He started creating paintings that no longer depicted the external world, but the landscape of the human soul. His canvases pulsed with anxiety, sadness, and mystery. Critics were shocked. Some called his work ugly or unfinished, but others recognized that Munch was breaking boundaries. In 1889, tragedy struck again when his beloved father died. The loss hit him with brutal force. Munch felt completely alone in the world, but in his grief, he made a bold decision. He would leave Norway and devote his life fully to art. That same year, he traveled to Paris, the heart of the European avant-garde. Paris changed him forever. His youth was a mixture of frailty and fire, illness and inspiration, fear and fierce creativity. These years shaped the man who would soon create some of the most haunting images in the history of art. When Edvard Munch arrived in Paris in 1889, he stepped into a world filled with vibrant colors, radical ideas, and artistic rebellion. The city was alive with innovation, and for the first time, Munch felt he truly belonged somewhere. He absorbed everything: French symbolism, Impressionist color theory, and the emotional intensity of Van Gogh. Yet, even in Paris, he remained faithful to his inner darkness, painting what he once described as the soul's battlefield. In 1893, Munch created the work that would make him immortal, the Scream. The painting was born from a panic attack he experienced while walking along a fjord at sunset. He later wrote, "I felt a great, unending scream piercing through nature. The bold lines, swirling sky, and distorted figures shocked the art world. Many critics mocked it, but others recognized its genius." Over time, the Scream became one of the most iconic images in the history of art. Throughout his adulthood, Munch led a life filled with emotional turbulence. His relationships were unstable, marked by jealousy, fear, and deep insecurity. One of his most dramatic romances ended with a gunshot. Munch injured his own hand during a heated argument. The scandal haunted him for years. Loneliness became a constant companion, and he poured this loneliness into paintings that explored love, longing, anxiety, and death. As his reputation grew across Europe, Munch traveled frequently between Berlin, Paris, and his native Norway. But fame never brought peace. He drank heavily, suffered from hallucinations, and experienced severe anxiety attacks. In 1908, after a period of extreme psychological collapse, he admitted himself to a clinic in Copenhagen. The treatment was long and painful, but it saved him. For the first time in years, he found clarity. After leaving the clinic, Munch returned to Norway and chose a quieter life. He bought a small house in Eekly, surrounded by forests and fields. There he lived almost like a recluse, painting, walking, and observing nature. His style became brighter, more colorful, and more peaceful, though the emotional depth remained. He painted farmers, workers, and the Norwegian landscape, capturing a softer side of his soul. During the 1930s, as political tensions rose in Europe, Munch's art was declared degenerate by the Nazi regime in Germany. Many of his works were removed from museums. This hurt him deeply, but he continued painting until the end, determined to remain true to himself. In his later years, Munch lived in isolation, accompanied only by his animals and the canvases that filled every room of his house. He painted until his hands trembled. Even as his eyesight weakened, he continued working, refusing to surrender to age. On January 23, 1944, Edvard Munch died quietly at his home in Eekly at the age of 80. After his death, authorities discovered over 1,000 paintings, thousands of drawings, and countless prints stored in his home. It was as if he had lived not one lifetime, but several. Munch's adult life was shaped by pain, passion, and relentless self-discovery. And from all that suffering, he created an artistic universe that continues to touch the human soul long after his passing.